Hi everyone, in today's tutorial I am going to discuss the navigation for the weekly outlines and then go into a discussion about your first essay assignment for this course. So I've already opened week 1 in the English 101 course. You can see week 1 at the top here. In this week, there are two documents. The first is the weekly outline. The second is the major essay assignment for this week. And each week in the course is set up the same way. So if you have any questions about how to navigate subsequent weeks, such as week 2, just refer back to this video. What you can see here, in addition to the documents, is that there is a due date listed. The due date for this particular week in this particular course is January the 19th. Refer to the individual due dates in your course as they may differ. Additionally, you have access to the discussion board, which you can click to take you to a list of different discussion board assignments, and you can click on week 1 so that you can start your post. You also have a Dropbox here for Essay 1 Rough Draft. Before we get to the Essay 1 Rough Draft Dropbox, let's go through the Week 1 outline. For the Week 1 outline, you have just a brief discussion at the top that you'll want to read through, and then you have an assigned reading, Chapter 1, an assigned discussion board prompt. The first discussion board for this course is not graded. It is just an introduction, so hop into the discussion board and introduce yourself to the class. Tell us something interesting about you. Tell us how long you've been at Limestone, when you plan to graduate, things of that nature. Being in an online course can feel a little bit impersonal, but you guys have the opportunity to get to know each other, and this is a great way to start that. Next, you have the writing section. 2 bullet points here. Review the materials for Essay 1. It's a narrative, more specifically a personal narrative, which I typically refer to as a memoir. Start that rough draft and then submit the rough draft by the due date assigned, which as we know now is January the 19th. So let's take a look at that assignment. Okay, so for all of the major writing assignments in this course, the documents are going to look fairly similar. At the top of the document, you will have the basic information. Notice here that I've written memoir, so again, it's a personal narrative, which is a memoir. They're essentially the same thing. The length will be 3 to 5 pages. That will be the length for all of the major essays in this course, and the format is MLA format. Since this course does not utilize any research or outside sources, MLA format largely refers to just the document or the page setting, so using the correct font, etc. If you need more information on setting up your document, go back to the course and you will have a link in the lesson/tutorial section of the course. It's just another video that takes you through setting up that document. For this document, there's a brief discussion for the assignment, thesis, description you should include in the essay, and dialogue you're encouraged to include in the essay. For the assignment, your goal is to write a narrative essay based on a personal experience of significance. Significance is a really important word there. Don't just tell me about what you ate for lunch yesterday. Pick a big moment in your life. Tell that story. Tell the reader all of the necessary details to understand what you were going through, what you were thinking, what you were feeling, and what the outcome was. We're going to talk more in just a second about the narrative arc and how to construct your essay using the narrative arc. Before we get to that, though, just a couple of points here to consider. I want you guys to consider how you want your reader to react to the story itself. That includes the characters, the actions, the power of the events. You are in control of telling the story, so you get to choose. For your thesis statement, your essay should be told to make a specific point or to illustrate a specific idea. This should relate to the significance. Is this a story about growth? Is this a story about failure, overcoming a challenge? What is the focus of your essay? Ask yourself that question. Quite literally, ask yourself, what is my essay about and what point do I want my reader to take away from reading this essay. How you answer those questions helps you determine how you can write your thesis. As always, there are going to be references to different sections of the textbook to help you identify where you can find more information on these topics. Okay, let's go into a brief lecture and learn more about writing that personal narrative about writing your memoir for this course. A few conventions of the genre of memoir will be a clearly identified event. This is the action that occurs. A clearly described setting. Your story needs to take place somewhere, and that setting should be tied to the story itself. Vivid descriptive detail. So describing the setting and painting a picture kind of walk hand in hand, right? You do need to describe the setting. You also will want to describe the characters. The type of description you include is up to you. For some stories, the physical description of a character may be important, and for others, maybe it's not important. Again, you get to decide what is most important. So think about what you want your reader to take away and how you can best describe those ideas to the reader. Also, try to provide a consistent point of view. Aim to write in first person perspective throughout this essay. This essay is about you, so you should utilize the personal pronouns I, me, and my. And thinking about a clear main point, this again goes back to the idea of significance. This is why you're telling the story. It's a little bit different than the event itself, right? The event is just the facts, man. That's just what happened. The point is what you took away from it, and possibly even what you want your reader to take away from reading your story. Moving forward to the narrative arc, this visual example can help you understand how a story moves and why those movements are really important. All good stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So the language that we use will be exposition, climax, and denouement. There are two other parts we have to consider as well, the rising action and the falling action. For the exposition, this is the background information or the beginning of the story. It should lead to the rising action. These are the plot points that move your reader to the climax, which is the most important point in the story. Notice in this image that the climax is actually at the point of the triangle. So the rising action should build. There should be a sense of tension that takes place or occurs in your story that makes the climax the most important part of the story. Next, we need falling action. So after the most important part of the story, we don't just want to end the story. You do want to kind of smoothly take your reader or lead your reader to the denouement. The denouement is the untying of knots. So thinking about the rising action and the climax as points of tension, points that are built to the denouement, the falling action, they need to lead the reader to a sense of release or relief where the conclusion takes place. Knots are untied, questions are answered. There is a sense of ending or conclusion. As we consider all of these different parts, what you might notice here are that there are 5 parts of the narrative arc. Those 5 parts of the narrative arc for this particular assignment can become 5 parts of an essay. This is just a suggestion, and it won't work for all stories that you tell. But you might consider offering the exposition in the introduction, the rising action in a first body paragraph, and so on and so forth. This can help you start with a bit of structure, and as you write the story, revise the story, develop the story, feel free to play with the structure as well. Generally speaking, though, all essays that tell a story should contain similar components. Your introduction should be a traditional introductory paragraph in the sense that it helps set the reader up for success in terms of understanding your story. Again, kind of like the exposition. It should also lead to a thesis. Your thesis should present the main point of the essay, and it should be focused towards the assignment. So make sure that you tell that point of significance. Typically, the thesis statement is the last 1 to 2 sentences of the introductory paragraph. Though this is not always the case, it is a good rule of thumb. Here are 2 examples that you might consider. In both of these examples, we have 2 sentences. The 2 sentences are short, they're not overly complicated, but they allow the reader to understand what the essay may be about, what point the essay focuses on, and we get that from just the 2 sentences. So let's take a look at the first example. It says, "My eyes were closed to the beauty behind putting your own ideas into the world, but were open after 1 year in one class. It all began in room F206 of Wando High School, the yearbook room." In these 2 short sentences, we can identify that the author experiences change, going from eyes closed to being opened. The change is pretty quick, 1 year, and this author has placed it in the academic context, so really a year is like 9 months in the academic context. So this is a quick change. The author has also identified that this opening of eyes contains a sense of beauty, and that beauty relates again to the academic world, putting your own ideas into the world. The setting in this story most likely is going to be important, and the author has narrowed the setting from the high school to the yearbook room, offering one central location in which the story will take place. So even though these 2 sentences are short, even though these 2 sentences don't tell us everything, from these 2 sentences we can gather a good understanding of what the story might be about. Let's take a look at the second example. The second example says, "I was smart and I knew it. That is, until I got the results of the proficiency test." Okay, even shorter here, right? 2 really short sentences. But what can we get from this? This story isn't so much about beauty, but eyes are still being opened here. This story seems to focus on failure or a challenge, and that challenge seems to relate to, again, the academic setting. So, in these 2 very short sentences, we can understand that the author has their eyes opened, just not so much in a positive way, and it will relate to, most likely, again, not so positive results on a proficiency test. So, as you can see from these 2 examples, your thesis statement isn't going to say, exactly what your essay is about, or it doesn't have to. But it should provide the reader with enough detail that they understand what is coming next. As you move forward through the body of the essay, again, I would suggest a 5 paragraph model for this, as this is your first major writing assignment in this course, and it just gives you a little bit of a concrete structure to work with. So if you do follow that model, you have 3 solid body paragraphs. Each body paragraph is a different part of the story, but each body paragraph should, in terms of structure, follow the same pattern. You want a strong topic sentence. The topic sentence of each body paragraph should present the main point that is developed in that paragraph and relates to the thesis statement. Following the topic sentence, there should be several sentences of detail. Try to push yourself here. Write more sentences than you think you need, and then narrow down if necessary. And then offer a transition to the next paragraph. This will help with a sense of flow and really just drive home the idea that you have a good structure in your paper. As you move to the conclusion, your conclusion is going to do exactly what a conclusion should do, or what a denouement should do. It needs to untie those knots. It needs to wrap up the essay, answer unanswered questions. Try to leave your reader with food for thought as well. One thing to consider is that if the story is significant for you, it is possible that the reader could learn something from your story. So what should they learn? What should they take away? What do you want the reader to think about tomorrow, the next day, and the next week after reading your story? If you have questions about writing your narrative, don't hesitate to ask. I encourage you to think about a story that really had a major impact on your life and think about how you want to tell that story. Once you have written your rough draft, you will go back into the course and you will submit your rough draft for feedback. A couple of things I want you guys to consider here is that it is a rough draft, right? I always like to drive home this point. A rough draft should be rough. It is not polished. You can do the polishing later. Offer as much of the story as you possibly can, and then you'll receive some feedback from me that can help you develop the story further, revise the story if certain parts need to be revised, offer a clearer structure, and so on and so forth. But don't worry so much about uploading a completed essay. You will do that in week 2 when you submit the final version of this essay. Once you're ready to submit the document, click on the Dropbox link. Notice that it says Submit Here. Select Browse My Computer. Attach your document. You can see the document attached here. So I do encourage you to, when you title your documents, title them something specific. This is not a great example of that. It just says Sample MLA Essay 1. You might consider English 101, Essay 1, Term 1, or something of that nature. Next, click Submit. Okay, so I've received a red bar at the top of the screen. I can't actually submit an essay to this course for grading since I'm logged in as the instructor. You, on the other hand, should receive a green bar, and green is good in this case. It means that you can go and do something else. If you do happen to receive a red bar, go back to week 1, click on the Dropbox link once more, and go through the process again. If you do have technical issues, please let me know as soon as possible so that we can work together to address the issue. After you submit the document, in addition to the green bar at the top of the screen, you will also receive a submission receipt to your Limestone College email, which confirms that you've submitted a document. If you have questions about how to submit your document, just ask.